As most trees get older, they get strong and tall, ever more handsome, rising high above the stones around them, until we bring them down with a saw and build with them. They live with dignity. We're not like that. We have our little time on earth, a struggle for the most part, a hurried growth, and then a long descent into the grave. We are blessed more than the tree or stone, for we can make a mark, make a record of our thoughts that may persist, may in some infrequent instance have a value for those who follow us. This is the gift of life we have. We think, we build, we use the tree and stone. These are the thoughts on aging written by Doug Rasmussen in 1999. Rasmussen is known for his unique gift of writing poetry and short stories. These were published in 2 books released in the late 1990s, filled with knowledge about local people, events, memories, and other facts. The books were called I Guess You Had to Be There and Celebrating the Commonplace. Helping Doug with the publishing process was his wife, Louise, who Doug met through a college roommate. The two were married for 51 years and welcomed 3 children into their family. They were both of Norwegian heritage and proudly shared this with anyone who would listen. They would tell stories about their Norwegian ancestors and happy times at the local Norwegian Lutheran church. The couple lived on the family farm, eventually recognized as a century farm. Doug would proudly claim to be a simple Norwegian farmer. Doug was born on March 13, 1927 in Morris to August and Elma Halderson Rasmussen. He was their only child and was raised on the farm near Long Lake, north of Hancock and east of Morris. Doug's great-grandfather brought his wife and children to America from Norway in 1850 and settled near Kenyon, Minnesota. Doug's grandfather left that home and homesteaded in Stevens County in 1870. Doug's father and most of his uncles and aunts were born at the home located on the shore of Long Lake. Later, August and Elma would live in the home with their son, along with August's brother Ross. Doug and Ross spent a great deal of time together and even shared a bedroom upstairs. Ross was a bachelor and August's partner in farming. It was a terrible shock to Doug at the age of 11 to lose his uncle to a heart attack. Doug attended rural school near his home and then went on to finish at Hancock High School, graduating in 1944. He would tell stories about crossing the slough on a dirt road now known as the Mill Dam Road. He was quite scared because Norwegian ancestors told stories about the trolls who lived beneath bridges. The family also farmed the lake bed during drought years. Doug went on to attend college at Concordia in Moorhead and graduated with a degree in math and chemistry in 1948. His college roommate was Roger Sanders. For a few years, he worked in the Dakotas doing geological surveys prior to the construction of the Garrison Dam. August Rasmussen passed away suddenly, and Doug returned home to the farm. He often took his family back to the Lemon, South Dakota area, taking gravel roads along the Little Missouri River. He would share tales of testing water and giving input on the dam construction. Clara Louise Sanders was born on July 10, 1929 in Williston, North Dakota. She grew up in the small town of Rawson, located in what is now the heart of the oil fields. Her parents were Edwin and Edith Swenson Sanders. She was the youngest of 3 children. Her siblings were Roger and Jean. Early in life, she was called Louise, and the name stayed with her. Louise attended Arnegard Public School, graduating in 1947. One of her constant companions was her Uncle Albert, her father's brother, who had homesteaded nearby. Louise went on to Concordia College in Moorhead and graduated with a Bachelor of Arts degree in home economics in 1951. One of her college roommates was Lorraine Thompson from Cyrus. Louise taught home ec in Plentywood, Montana for 1 year. She then took classes at the University of Minnesota St. Paul and Montana State University in Bozeman, Montana. She interned in dietetics at Barnes Hospital in St. Louis, Missouri, and became a registered dietitian. During those college days, for both Doug and Louise, Doug went to visit his roommate in Rawson. They had met in college, but after visiting Roger, the two started dating. They were married on August 28, 1954, and settled on the shore of Long Lake in Hodges Township. When Louise's parents decided to quit farming, they retained the mineral rights. This turned out to be a good thing for Louise when the oil boom started in North Dakota. Their land contained oil wells, which began to produce and provide income to the family. Their first child, Andrea, was born in 1955, followed by Jeff in 1956 and Clayton in 1958. Their earliest playmates were their cousins, the children of John and Jean Eckern, who owned the bowling alley and roller rink in Morris. Doug and Louise eventually extended the farm and renovated the family home. It was eventually given the distinction of being a century farm, owned by the same family for over 100 years. Louise was very interested in baseball and was an avid Minnesota Twins fan. They spent many evenings playing whist with neighbors such as Harold and Joanne Anderson. Other good friends and neighbors were Al and Joe Tunn, Jean and Bev Tunn, Erland and Joyce Charles, Myron and Doris Benson, and Dwayne and Minnie Benson. Many evenings were spent visiting neighbors, talking about farming and solving the world's problems. The couples would host card parties playing whist. Joanne Anderson recalled some interesting gift exchanges among the men in the neighborhood. Doug, Myron, and Harold were often called the Three Musketeers and gave each other weird birthday gifts. One of these was a goat found wandering in the area and then tied to a pole in one of their yards. On another occasion, Doug and Harold gave Myron a live turkey tied to his front door at his home in Morris. At Christmas time, Doug and Louise and Harold and Joanne would get together and make rosettes and krumkake. Harold and Doug would do all the frying for the traditional Norwegian treats. When the work was done, they played cards and enjoyed the goodies. Louise also was part of a bridge group who met often. On one occasion, when Louise was the host, one of the ladies did not show. Since they could not play without 4 people per table, Louise talked her son Jeff into playing. He spent the next 3.5 hours learning the intricacies of the game. Doug was on the Stevens County Soil and Water Conservation Board for many years. They were both very active in their church, Our Redeemer Lutheran Church in Hancock. Both were Sunday school teachers. Louise was president of the women's group. Doug served on the church council, and they helped at many funerals. They could always be counted on when needed by their church family. Doug was a charter member of the Hancock Lions Club, working in the popcorn stand at the fair and on the 4th of July. Louise liked to say she was a knitter, but very rarely finished a project. Jeff stated that she started knitting a sweater for him in the 6th grade. He found it 10 years later partially complete. She would use huge needles with little patience for tiny stitches. She also liked to cook, read, and garden. Due to their Norwegian heritage, you could often find Doug and Louise at area lutefisk suppers and enjoying other Norwegian delicacies. They could tell you the best places to eat lutefisk and also the worst. On their 50th wedding anniversary, Louise's sister Jean made them kransekake, or Norwegian wedding cake. Not only was Doug a farmer, but he also enjoyed experimenting with mechanics. He built one of the first 4-wheel drive tractors in the area. He built the tractor in the mid-60s, long before this was common. He also built a reverse tractor used for loading and was perfect for spreading manure. Doug would experiment with many interesting endeavors and sometimes had good results and other times not. Doug raised Charolais cattle, had horses, 1 milk cow, and a few pigs. He farmed nearly 1,000 acres and, in his spare time, sold and repaired Electrolux vacuum cleaners. Louise had the distinction of being the first hip transplant replacement patient at the Morris Hospital. She was on medication for epilepsy discovered during her college days, but fortunately rarely had seizures. Doug loved to tell stories, and in the 1990s started writing a column called Rasmussen's Rantings in the Hancock Record. He soon expanded to write for the Morris Sun and Tribune. His columns were often about things talked about at the round table in the Owl's Nest Cafe or at the Senior Citizen Center. He also wrote about memories from his childhood and current events. The column was very popular with readers. Eventually, he was encouraged to organize the short stories and publish a book. His first book, I Guess You Had to Be There, was published in 1997. Louise helped him with spelling and grammar, and Jill Landwehr and Carol Owen did proofreading. After the first printing sold out, Doug did a second printing. After a few years, he compiled enough stories to publish a second book titled Celebrating the Commonplace. Doug was also interested in the development of the Regional Arts Council and the Area Renaissance Cultural Center. He often held book readings at these locations and area libraries. They also spent time watching their children grow up and attending many school functions. All three graduated from Morris High School. Andrea, called Angie, went on to attend Concordia College and eventually got a pharmacy degree. Her first job as a pharmacist was in Shell Lake, Wisconsin, and then Ladysmith, where she met and married Mark Belko. Okay. Jeff went to Concordia in Moorhead and got his degree in history and art. Later, he worked for 5 years with refugees in search of employment. For the next 20 years, he ran a photo studio and lab in Minneapolis. He later returned to the family farm. Clayton works for Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railroad. He has one child, Renee, who is Doug and Louise's only grandchild. She is married to Kenny Molina, and they have 3 children. Renee and Kenny announced their engagement at Doug and Louise's 50th anniversary in 2004. Doug was diagnosed with cancer of the lung in 2004. He underwent radiation treatments. The cancer spread, and he died on May 22, 2005. Before his death, the couple was able to celebrate their 50th wedding anniversary, but Doug did not make it for his granddaughter's wedding. Louise moved from the farm to an apartment in Hancock. As her health started to fail, she moved to the Courage Cottage in Morris. Louise passed away in 2018. The life journey for Doug and Louise was not about being famous, unless you count Doug's book readings. It was also not about being rich, although the oil well did help a little. They did not invent anything really special, but the machinery ideas were pretty clever. Instead, according to them, they were just typical Norwegian farmers going through life, celebrating the commonplace.